everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to yap and gab about the notable books that I read in January. I did read a total of 20 books this past month, and I want to talk about like, I don't know, 15 of them. Most of the books that I read this past month were pretty notable for very different reasons. I did want to just quickly note, yes, my Christmas tree is still up, but it is no longer a Christmas tree. It is in fact a Mardi Gras tree because I am from the New Orleans area. And so my sister turned it into a Mardi Gras tree. She has garland and a Mardi Gras themed fleur-de-lis on the tree. So fun times. So the world is on fire right now, right? I feel like every day I open my phone, I see more and more headlines that make me want to go insane. So I just wanted to film this casual video where I can chat about books that I've been loving recently, to distract myself and to distract you guys from what is happening. And please know that if you are also feeling like you're going insane and like the despair is overwhelming, please know that you're not alone and those feelings are valid. And I truly love and appreciate you all so much that choose to watch my videos, and I hope that you get some recommendations from this, and I hope that you are also reading books that you're loving. That is my wish for you guys today. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. I read a lot of different genres in January, mainly because of course, like all of my favorite booktubers have been coming out with their best books of 2025 videos. I cannot speak right now. And so I follow booktubers that read all kinds of genres. And so as people have been raving about their favorite books, I've been wanting to pick up books of different genres and sub-genres. So I do have quite a few romance novels that I'm going to talk about today, but I also have books that are like literary fiction, sci-fi, horror, fantasy. So I definitely think there's going to be something for everyone in this video. First series I want to talk about, because I've read the first 2 books of this series this month and I absolutely devoured these books, gave them both 5 stars. I am obsessed. I cannot wait to read the rest of this series. That is the Cowboy Colony series by Ursa Dax. I read book 1, Married to an Alien Cowboy, and book 2, which I think is called Wrangled by an Alien Cowboy. I could be wrong. Book 1 has like an orangey cover. Book 2 has like a pink cover. And this centers around this like colony planet, prison planet that gives Wild West desert type vibes, where these alien men have been exiled to this planet because they committed heinous crimes as children. And so as a way to rehabilitate them, they sent them to this prison planet where they could be alien cowboys. And now they have decided to enact this mail order bride program where human women will be sent to this planet to become brides for these alien cowboy dudes. And this series is so fun. Definitely has some unhinged elements to it. I love unhinged things, books, TV shows, movies, you name it, I love it. And so I was living for that. This series just has a very like endearing and hilarious vibe to it. Book 1 is about a woman who is on the run, and that's why she joins this mail order bride program. The hero in this one is more like grumpy but very sweet. And then book 2 is about Darcy and Fallon. Oh my god, Fallon is like the sweetest, like most endearing cinnamon roll hero. I love Fallon so much. He's easily my favorite character in this series so far. But I also really loved Darcy, his love interest, his bride. She decides to join the mail order bride program basically to escape her insufferable mother who is trying to marry her off to an asshole. And so yeah, oh my god, their romance was so adorable and sweet and fun, and like, yeah, I'm all in when it comes to this series. It's just such a fun time. Definitely something I could see myself picking up every now and then when I need a palate cleanser, you know? I reread Then Came You by the queen, the historical romance queen, Lisa Kleypas. I will link a couple of videos either up in the cards above or down in the description. We recently did a whole live show discussion about this book for our Wallflowers read along, or our Lisa Kleypas read along, as it has kind of now become. All last year we read the Wallflower series, the Hathaway series, and the Ravenel series by Lisa Kleypas. And so we decided to kind of extend that read along into 2026 by reading, or for me, rereading the Gamblers of Craven duet. This is a duet that Lisa Kleypas came out with around like 1993, 1994. It's definitely an older historical for her. And you definitely get that vibe when you are reading this. This is one of my top favorite Lisa Kleypas novels. I am obsessed. I also want to link up in the cards above the vlog that I filmed a few years ago when I read this for the first time, because you will be able to tell just how much I loved this book. It's like enemies to lovers perfection, like true pure hate to love. Alex and Lily hate each other's guts, and it is so entertaining to read about. This romance gets so messy and angsty and emotional. Lily in particular is like one of my favorite Lisa Kleypas heroines, or just my favorite historical romance heroines ever, and she is going through it in this book. And Alex, our hero, goes through a lot in this book as well, and goes through a lot of character growth. I would highly recommend this book, by the way, if you are a Kate and Anthony stan from Bridgerton. This couple gives those same vibes, because at the beginning, our hero, Alex, is actually courting Lily's younger sister, Penelope. So that's where some of the messiness comes into play. I read a fantasy romance, a romantasy, this month. This is Warrior Princess Assassin by Bridget Kemmerer. This is certainly not the best romantasy I've ever read. However, there are a few standout things about this. For one, this is an MMF poly romantasy. We have Jory, our heroine, she's a princess. We have Kai, who is the warrior. He is the king of a neighboring country to Jory. And then we have Asher, who is the assassin of the story. And him and Jory have been best friends their entire lives. So basically, Asher and Jory have always had feelings for one another, but they've never acted on them for various reasons. And then Kai is now coming into the story because it has been arranged for Kai and Jory to marry, to form an alliance between their two kingdoms. And so this was just a really good time overall. I will say this book, it's like a 15-hour audiobook, and there were definitely times where I found myself getting bored and a little disengaged. However, I have to say, for one thing, Asher, the assassin character, he is my favorite character so far. I love Asher's character. He is someone who has been through so much. He was basically enslaved for quite a few years. His story reminds me kind of a lot of Celaena Sardathian from Throne of Glass. But we learned that not only was he enslaved, but he went through some terrible, awful things that no one should ever have to go through. But it does add a lot of complexity to his character, and he now just feels like unworthy of someone like Jory, especially because she's a princess. He's just an assassin, you know? And so I also loved seeing especially like Kai and Asher start to develop feelings for one another. I think that they have a very interesting dynamic, and then of course they're both obsessed with Jory. There is a scene like 90% into this book, we finally get an MMF steamy scene, and let me just tell you, that scene made this whole book worth it. Even though, like I said, there were times when I got bored and I wasn't the most engaged. That scene was chef's kiss, amazing. I definitely think I'm going to continue on with the series just because of this dynamic between these three characters. I'm all in for the characters. The story is like kind of just okay, and I would recommend checking it out for yourself. Next, I have I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. This is a translated work. It was originally written in French, I believe in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And then it was like very recently translated into English. This is science fiction, I would say. It definitely gives Twilight Zone vibes. I was influenced to read this by Janine from The Story Ain't Over. I'll definitely link her channel down in the description below. Anyone that I bring up, I always link them down in the description below. She talked about this book in her best books of 2025 video, and it just sounded so interesting to me, and I had never heard of this book before. But this follows this group of 40 women who are living in this bunker for years and years and years. Most of them are adults when they enter this bunker. Like they've essentially been kidnapped and put into this bunker. Our main character, who is unnamed, we believe was put into the bunker by mistake, because she was put into the bunker as a child and everybody else is an adult. And so basically these women are under 24/7 surveillance by these guards, and towards the beginning of the book, they are able to break out of that bunker situation, and they are navigating this planet, this environment that they are in, all alone, basically. And so this book is very slow and meandering at times, for sure. Like, it's not a perfect book, in my opinion. Like, I definitely didn't give it 5 stars. However, I will say, for one thing, the author's note really ties this book all together. Once you read the author's note at the end, and I would not recommend reading the author's note until the end because it would spoil events in the book, it really makes this story make a lot more sense, and it makes you think a lot about what you've just read. This book basically explores what it means to be human, and what it means to be a woman, and what it means to live an existence without men. It's just very fascinating. I think I settled on giving this like a 4 star. Definitely enjoyed it, but like I said, it's kind of very slow and meandering a lot of the time, so I did find myself getting bored at times. Next, I want to talk about my one DNF for January. This is a book that I did not finish. So we're talking about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for January. This is Willa's Beast by Ruby Dixon. So this is book 3 in her Ice Home series. Ruby Dixon is a very prolific author. She has many books, many series. She writes mainly alien romance books. And so in the suggested reading order for this whole world, you're supposed to read like the first 15 books of her Ice Planet Barbarian series and then jump on into the first few books of this series. So that's what I did. Over the past, like, I don't know, 5-6 years, I've been reading both the Ice Planet Barbarian series and then this Ice Home series. And this is the first book by Ruby Dixon that I have DNF'd, and I put it down around like the 30% mark. I was just not feeling this romance. One thing I will say, so this has a language barrier element to it. And sometimes that trope doesn't work for me, because sometimes it feels like really repetitive, and like the story and the romance isn't really going anywhere because of the language barrier. And that's, I think, something that I felt with this book. I also, for some reason, just like didn't feel invested in this romance or these two characters. Y'all are gonna have to let me know in the comments. I'm actually gonna reach out to my friend Avery, who is like Ruby Dixon's biggest fan. I need to know, is the Ice Home series worth continuing, or do I just need to be done with this series? Because there's definitely other series by Ruby Dixon that I want to read. I read a hard-hitting YA contemporary novel that was recommended by Ashley from Bookish Realm. She reads a lot of children's literature and YA literature, and so I get most of my recommendations for those genres from her. And this ended up being in her best books of 2025 video. So I read Please Pay Attention by Jamie Sumner. This is a book that is written in verse that centers around our main character, and I cannot remember her name, oh no. But it centers around our main character who has cerebral palsy, and she lives through a school shooting. We do experience the shooting from our main character's point of view, but it's not like super graphic or explicit. I mean, I would definitely recommend checking out the content warnings for yourself. If you think that you would be triggered by something like this, by a book like this, you know, definitely be kind to yourself and your mental health before going in. But, you know, I did want to mention that that scene goes by pretty quickly. This is mainly about the aftermath and how our main character is dealing with life after this horrific event that should have never happened, but shootings are literally happening every single day because our government sucks, right? And so we see that she's going through PTSD. Like, she hears, I think, like a firework go off, and understandably so, it sets her into like a panic attack. One of the things that I loved about this book, besides the writing, because the writing is phenomenal. I loved how this was written in verse. Like, it worked so well for these characters, for this story. But one thing we see is our main character starts going to equine therapy. Basically, she goes to this barn where there are horses who I guess have been trained for this type of therapy. But our main character learns how to take care of horses and how to ride horses with her disability in mind. And I just loved what that did for our main character's mental health and mental state. Oh my God, like those scenes were like the most beautiful moments in this book. I also loved the author's note at the end, because Jamie Sumner mentions that she was inspired to write this book because a very close friend of hers died in the Covenant School mass shooting. This happened in March of 2023 in Nashville. The Covenant School is a school that's connected to a Presbyterian church, and her very close friend was the principal of that school, and she very unfortunately lost her life. This is just one of those books that reminds me, like, I'll never, never, never understand why our government is just so complicit in letting these shootings happen. The lack of gun control laws, it's just absolute insanity. Next up, I want to talk about something completely different. Like I said, I was reading like all kinds of genres in January. The Disappearances of Draco Malfoy by Speech Writer. This is a Harry Potter fanfiction, a very lengthy Harry Potter fanfiction. It's over like 300,000 words. So about the length of Manacled by Senlin Yu, if you've read that fanfiction. This is interesting because I actually tried reading this fanfic like 3 years ago, I think. And I DNF'd it at the halfway mark, and I don't really remember why I DNF'd it. I just remembered that like I put it down one day and I never picked it back up. And yeah, like what? So I decided to try reading it again, and there is an audiobook of this fanfic, by the way, that ETL Echo made. Highly recommend going that route. They always do a fantastic job with their audiobook versions of Hermione fanfictions, but this is essentially a retelling of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, of the 7th and final book of the series, where we're seeing this starts at the end of Half-Blood Prince, where Draco has cornered Dumbledore in the Astronomy Tower. And instead of like Snape coming in and killing Dumbledore and Draco going off with the Death Eaters, Dumbledore offers Draco like refuge and sanctuary from the Death Eaters. And Draco takes Dumbledore up on that offer. And so he ends up being roped into the whole Horcrux hunt that the Golden Trio is undergoing. And so along the way, we see just how much Draco's presence changes the story of Deathly Hallows and how, like, what order they find the Horcruxes, and there's other events in the story that change along the way. There's also, of course, a romance between Draco and Hermione, and it's everything. So I think there's a lot of lore and world building in this fanfic that is, like, even above J.K. Rowling's writing ability. Like, it was just so well done. There are some incredibly epic scenes in this that blew me away. Definitely one of my top 5 favorite Hermione fics now. And I now understand why a lot of people feel that this is like the true ending of the series as opposed to Deathly Hallows, because in some ways it is a little bit better than Deathly Hallows, and that is really saying something, because I personally love that final book. Oh, also one last thing, this definitely reads like YA, because like I said, the author wanted this to fit in canon as closely as possible in like writing style. So just go in knowing that there are no explicit sex scenes. This is definitely more of a plot-driven fanfic than a romance-driven fanfic, but like I said, the romance that is featured in this is so good. All right, I did want to briefly mention Bottom of the Pyramid by Nia Sue. I am a Dance Moms girly. I have been a fan of Dance Moms since it originally came out. And it's a show that I find myself rewatching over and over again. I'm currently rewatching it right now. I'm on season 6. And so I knew that I wanted to pick up this book as soon as it came out, and I really enjoyed this. I think that it was very well written. And I think that Nia, of all of the girls on this show, Nia needed her own book to tell her own complete story, and the shit that she went through because of Abby Lee Miller and also because of the other girls. Like, she doesn't shy away from calling out the people that treated her wrong, and good for her, honestly, truly. I also loved seeing what her life became after Dance Moms. I didn't know too much about what she was doing after the show, except that I randomly watched a Lifetime movie that she starred in a few years back. Like, for instance, we see that she's a huge advocate and activist for voters' rights, and making sure that people register to vote and are, you know, exercising that right. And yeah, like, this was just really well done. I learned so much more about the show and about Nia through this book, and yeah, I highly recommend it, especially if you are also a fan of Dance Moms. 3 more books. I have Women on Platform 2 by Laura Anthony. This came highly recommended by both Christy and Tori. They listed this as like one of their top 10 books of 2025, and for very good reason. I also devoured this book. Absolutely loved this. So this time jumps between like the late 1960s into the early 70s in Ireland. And then I believe like 2022 or 2023, also in Ireland. We're following 3 main characters. We have Saoirse in the present day timeline, and then we have Maura and Bernie in the past timeline. And this essentially centers around the fight for women's rights, specifically for the right for legal contraception in Ireland. We see that throughout the book. Contraception was legal in the UK. So in Northern Ireland, you could absolutely go get birth control pills, condoms, things like that. But in Ireland, those things were still very much illegal. We also see that even as late as the early 1970s, it was illegal for a woman to work, to have a job once she got married, which is absolutely insane. Basically, we have Maura in the late 1960s. She meets this doctor, she marries him. All is going well at first, but we see that things take a very dark turn very quickly in their relationship. Christy ends up abusing Maura. So definite content warning for domestic violence. Then we have Bernie, who ends up becoming Maura's best friend. Bernie has 3 children of her own. She is in a very healthy and very loving marriage. But she is now pregnant with her 4th child, and that pregnancy is not going very well, basically. And so we see over the course of this book that these 2 women are both looking for methods of contraception for very different reasons, and they find themselves becoming a part of this women's rights, this women's liberation movement. And there was this event that happened in the early 70s where a group of women went on the train to, I believe the train was going from Dublin to Belfast, to buy contraception in Northern Ireland and then bring the contraception back with them to Ireland. And that became like a huge event with, you know, newspapers covering it, etc. And I loved this so much. The writing, amazing. I was drawn in from page 1. This is Laura Anthony's debut novel, and I'm blown away by that because this book was so freaking good. Cannot wait to read more from this author. I also love reading historical fiction novels that cover parts of history that I know like nothing about. I, you know, really only know about the fight for women's rights in the States. I don't really know how that played out in other countries. This book also made me feel really emotional thinking about like how many women had to fight for the rights that we have today, even in the context of now, like Roe v. Wade has been overturned in the States. And it's just like so crazy to think about. If I was born like 50, 60 years ago, I think I would have basically been forced into a very different life than I'm allowed to live now. Yeah, it's crazy to think about how much women had to fight for these rights. And like, we're still fighting to this day for these rights. And we're still talking about these same topics 50, 60 years later. Like, it's crazy. But I love this so much. I could see this being one of my favorite books of the year. So amazing. I also read something very, very different. Natural Beauty by Ling Huang. Oh my goodness. This is like literary fiction meets science fiction meets like thriller meets horror. There's a lot going on in this book. We are following our main character, who is unnamed at the beginning. She's given a name towards the middle of the book, but she is an Asian American. We see that her parents immigrated from China, I believe before she was born, and both her parents and her are very passionate about classical music, specifically classical piano. And so our main character grows up being a piano prodigy. She ends up going to a very prestigious conservatory in New York City. But something happens in her life that causes her to step away from classical music altogether. And so at the beginning of this book, she's just like working a restaurant job, but this woman comes in and persuades our main character to start working at this company called Holistic, which is essentially a beauty and wellness company. And I also want to mention that this book is very satirical. We're seeing that this book definitely makes fun of like the crazy procedures and like supplements that celebrities undergo to basically look as young as possible for as long as possible. I've heard this company Holistic being compared to companies like Goop that Gwyneth Paltrow runs. I can kind of see that comparison, but also this has like a science fiction twist to it because the procedures that are being done, the products that are being sold, like the skincare products that are being sold, are doing things that are just not possible in our world, or at least at this time. But we're seeing that our main character, you know, starts working for this company, and she takes the supplements that they give her. She uses the skincare products and the hair care products that they give her and stuff. And so she's assimilating into this company, not just by like her mental state, but by her physical appearance. These products are changing what she looks like. And this book gets very, very weird and unhinged, especially in the second half. If you know nothing about me, just know that I truly am at my core a weird book girly. So this was right up my alley. I absolutely loved this. I loved the satire elements. Like I said, the sci-fi, the horror. There's body horror in this, by the way, so like just know going into this, there's some like crazy shit. Like I said, it's unhinged towards the end, and I just loved every second of this. I also loved following this main character's journey with classical music. Like I said, she's a classical pianist. You can tell that this author really knows what she's talking about when it comes to music. Her author's bio mentions that she is a violinist, a very accomplished violinist. And so I loved reading about that, like her feelings about music versus her now working for this, you know, satirical, unhinged wellness and beauty company and everything that comes along with that, and like how her identity changes throughout the book. And it was just so good. So good. 5 stars, hands down. I'm very excited to read her next book, which is called Immaculate Conception. The very last book, yes, the last book that I want to talk about in this video is The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie. This is another memoir. I read 2 nonfiction books this month. That's crazy for me. I like never read nonfiction, but when I do, it tends to be a memoir. So Sherry Frankie is the eldest child in the Frankie family, who became very famous for the YouTube channel 8 Passengers, which was a family vlogging channel that their mother, Ruby Frankie, founded back in like, I believe 2015, when family vlogging was like getting to its peak popularity. And so you all may have heard a lot about the whole Ruby Frankie situation, the 8 Passenger situation, because there's a Hulu documentary. I have not watched that, but several YouTubers have made documentaries about this whole story. It's insane. It's truly insane. But now we are getting Sherry's own story in this memoir, and what her life was like growing up and how their life changed once Ruby Frankie became obsessed with vlogging, you know, their every waking moment. And then this woman, Jodi Hildebrandt, comes into their story and things just get crazier from there. This was probably one of the best written memoirs I've read probably ever. I loved how this was written, and you can tell that, I know that Sherry Frankie had a ghostwriter help her with this book, because she does give the ghostwriter a shout out in the author's note, but you can also tell that Sherry herself is very passionate about writing. She talks a lot about how she was very into journaling throughout like at least her teenage years, and you can definitely see that passion throughout this memoir. And I would definitely recommend going the audiobook route. I would also recommend going the audiobook route for Bottom of the Pyramid by Nia Sue. This was just so well written. Like I said, their story just gets crazier and crazier and crazier. What Sherry and her siblings had to go through, truly no child should ever have to go through anything like that. And it goes far beyond the family vlogging, because that alone, like, you're exploiting your children for views and for money. That alone is terrible. But like I said, Jodi Hildebrandt comes into the story and things just get worse and worse and worse. So yes, cannot recommend this highly enough. Even if you are someone that has watched several documentaries about this family, I promise that you'll get a different perspective reading Sherry's memoir. So that's gonna be it for all of the notable books that I read in January. Definitely leave a comment down below if you wanna tell me about books that you read in January, like notable books for you, whether you loved some books or hated some books. Definitely let me know. I love chatting with you guys in the comments and getting recommendations from you all. So I would love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. I thank you so much in advance if you do. I would also love it if you would hype this video. That is a new feature that you can now do on YouTube. So there should be a tab near like the comment section where it simply says like hype this video, I believe, and that would also really help get this video to more potential, you know, viewers and subscribers. So I would thank you so much if you did that. And with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.